Welcome to Diverse Joy, a podcast that infuses science, practical skills, and most of all, joy into diversity discussions. My co-host is the plaid-clad, wonderful Dr. Amber Nelson.
And my co-host is the similarly clad in plaid, Dr. William Cox. So, as we normally start, well, what's bringing you joy this month?
So this is August. We're in the heat of summer. And I know we've already talked about Pride in the Pride Month episode.
Yes.
But actually Madison, there's overall Pride Month, but then cities have their Pride weekends given on particular weekends. Madison Pride is technically in August. But I'm sure people are tired of me talking about Pride. But because of that, one of the events that happens here in Madison is a boat cruise.
Oh,
so
okay.
this local establishment, it's called Woof's. It's a gay bar, rents out a little boat, well, kind of big boat actually, and you buy a ticket for it, and then it's a bunch of members of the gay community, and they have snacks and booze, and Madison, Wisconsin is situated in the middle of 3 or 4 very large, beautiful lakes, and so we go around the lake a few times, and it's just really nice sense of community, and you get nice breeze on the lake usually, so even when it's warm out, it's very comfortable, and it's just kind of a fun event. I love it.
That's so great. That sounds like so much fun. I love that. And Madison is beautiful, so I imagine it is gorgeous and fun and really great time with community too. Yeah.
And it shifts your perspective because you're used to being on land,
right?
And then you're seeing buildings from the other side because a lot of our buildings are right up against the lake.
Yeah.
You get to see beautiful houses on the edge of the lake. We have this thing called the Monona Conference Center.
Yes.
We took some promo photos there.
Yeah, I kept saying Moana instead of Monona.
Yeah, Monona. And you get to see it like it's right on the lake, and it kind of looks like a giant ship itself, like jutting out into the water. Monona Terrace and Conference Center. Eric Roman is correcting me. Thank you, Eric Roman. But yeah, so it's beautiful, fun, cool activity in August.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that.
Gotta get my tickets for it for this month.
Yeah, I think I saw a poster for it. I was like, ooh, I wish I was going to be here for it.
Yeah. You got to see Woof's, the bar. We went there and had a couple cocktails last night. That was fun too.
It was great. It was really great.
Awesome. And how about you, Amber? What is bringing you joy?
Yeah, well, at this point, it's been at the end of last year, I resigned from my academic position.
Yes.
And which, comes with lots of feelings.
End of last school year.
Yes, academic year. But my joy, and it continues to bring me joy, was a going away gift that my students made me. And one of my favorite quotes, and I've probably shared it before. If I haven't, I'd be surprised if I haven't shared it before, but it's a Maya Angelou quote, and it says, people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And my students printed it off, and then had all of the students write on there how I made them feel. And like I said, oh man, I hope I don't cry a ton this episode, but it was continues to be something that just warms my heart and means so much to me because it's something that I really, really care about in all of my interactions, right? That like not just my students, but the person I meet at Walgreens, like that just happened last night, right? That I can make them feel like loved and seen and supported. So it just really, really warms my heart, and I tear up a little bit every time I see it and I think about it. And
thank you to Amber's students.
Yeah, thank you.
She will always remember how you made her feel.
Exactly. And that is one like really tangible thing that I'll continue to look at and remember. So yeah. So that's bringing me joy, even that like these are tears of joy.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I know how much you loved your students, and you know, having worked with students for many years, also like sometimes you don't know the impact that you make on them because they get done with your class and they leave. So them putting that effort in for you, that brings me joy too. Yeah. Like thank you, students, for sharing that love with my friend.
Yes. Yeah. It was really very, very special. So thank you, students. Yep.
All right. Well, we have a great show ahead of you, listeners and viewers. So our starting topic is something that people ask me about a lot, actually. Our kind of headline, and it'll probably be the title of the episode, is that diverse people bring diverse perspectives. Yeah. Another way to frame this is kind of like, what are some of the benefits and positives about having diversity in a workplace, in a work group, and so on. And then we're also going to talk about maybe some challenges that can arise in that realm. But we didn't say ahead of time who's going to go first. But you know, why is diversity beneficial, you think,
to spaces? I mean, diverse people bring diverse perspectives. There's so many parts to what that means and how that looks. Yep. I mean, having that really helps to enhance creativity. We see increased innovation when you have folks from different lived experience. We talked about lived experiences when we had Nikki on, but really different lived experiences and different perspectives gives a totally different, a more robust understanding of whatever your workplace surrounds, right? Whatever issues or whatever thing that you work with, having somebody from a different angle, a different lens truly adds to a much larger picture. It's like, there's an old like wives' tale or saying about, you know, having a bunch of blind folks or blindfolded people touching an elephant, right? Yeah. And that they all are saying something totally and describing something totally different. But when you put all of those perspectives together, you're going to get something more nuanced. Because if we try to describe the elephant just from one person's perspective, you're only getting the foot versus the trunk versus all of these pieces. So how can we maximize? I don't like using the word capitalize, but like maximize having multiple perspectives so that you can get a more full picture than just from one perspective.
Absolutely.
So again, it helps with that and helps with creativity and innovation.
Yeah, and the kind of blind man and the elephant idea also helps with like catching problems. So this is long ago now for our listeners, but back in season 1 when we talked about bias in healthcare, we talked about the pulse ox.
Yes.
Right. So this is a machine that kind of measures oxygen in the blood through your skin, and turns out doesn't work well if you have darker skin. Right. Gives incorrect readings. And what we said then and bringing it back now is, you know, well, if there was a darker skinned person in the room, right, they would have caught that problem sooner. Exactly. Because testing it on that person would have revealed the problem. Right. And that's true both for very physical, like tactile things like that, but also these different perspectives we're talking about. Sure. They can see problems that might arise from a different angle and so on. Yeah. And you mentioned creativity. Yep. So there's a whole scientific literature on creativity. Where does it come from? What is it? How do we get more of it? That kind of thing. And kind of a fundamental definition of creativity is kind of combining ideas in a different way. Yeah. And having people with different perspectives, which we are generally talking about racial diversity, sexual orientation diversity, gender, all those kinds of things. But it can also be, you know, growing up in the country versus the city. 100%. Because everything about our life experiences crafts how we see the world. Yeah. And so when we're tackling a problem together, us seeing it different ways helps us solve it better. This is, and this isn't just rhetoric and platitudes about, oh, diversity is great. Like science shows this, that when you pull together people with different perspectives, they have more innovative and transformative solutions to problems. This is something that the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, has recognized and recognized this science. And in some of their literature and their calls for diversifying the scientific workforce, this is what they say, that transformative scientific advances come come from teams that think in different ways.
Right.
We don't have new advances in science, in research from everyone thinking the same way everyone's always been thinking, because then what's transformative about it? Having different perspectives results in more innovation, more creative problem solving. And I know we don't, like the capitalizing word, but also more money. So there are research studies that corporations with more diversity in their upper management end up making more money.
Yeah. 100%. We right before you were talking about this, you were talking about the pulse ox and having diversity in the room, and it reminds me of Lonnie Love from The Real. She's an actress and comedian, and on the show The Real, and she often talks about where was Jamal the intern when these decisions were being made, and specifically it was in reference to I don't know, a few years back, H&M had put out these advertisement for their new kids' clothing, and they had a picture of a black child in a shirt that said "coolest monkey in the jungle."
Oh, geez.
And obviously people were quite upset, understandably and justifiably so. And again, was that the intent of the organization? Maybe somebody had thought that it would be funny. But if there was enough people in the space, and we're going to talk a little bit about inclusion and belonging later, but if there were enough people in the space that felt like they could say something, or that there was somebody in the space that did say something, maybe we would have, avoided something that was really hurtful and harmful to a community, but also harmful to the organization and to their own, if we were to talk about capitalism, their own pocketbook and their money, and just the reputation of the organization on the whole. It was from 2018 is when it was. Yeah.
When that shirt was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing I want to draw attention to and kind of underline for ourselves and for our listeners, right now we're talking about diversity and the value of diversity for kind of utility of the organization. And I want to be clear that, that's one thing to talk about. And I do believe in those things. I think they're important and wonderful. But we don't want to think of diversity just in terms of utility. Why it's good for the bottom line or the creativity. Also, it's just the right thing to do in terms of morale, and just like we want everyone to have opportunities and to kind of correct past cultural inertia, for instance. For sure. So sometimes when we talk about the utility, people are like, well, it should just happen because it's the right thing. And we absolutely believe that.
100%. And I sit with that a lot. Ooh, nice catch.
I just tossed my pen.
He just tossed his pen and caught it with the other hand. It was impressive. On accident, I think. But, I think that I often talk about that I might have mentioned it prior as well, but that we want people to want to do the right thing because it's the right thing. And I hope that eventually the heart and the mind follows. Sometimes it's behavior first. Sometimes it's getting them or speaking the language of what's going to get them motivated. And when it comes to organizations, when it comes to workplaces and spaces, often we have to use the language of utility and motivation and money in order for corporations to say, or organizations and workspaces to say, oh, okay, here's how and why we need to do this.
Yeah. Absolutely. And kind of related to this, so we're talking about it kind of the organizational level, but I also want to kind of talk directly to quote unquote diverse people. The unique perspective that each and every one of us, each and every one of you listening, you have a unique perspective that you're bringing to the table. No one can fully copy or imitate that. And, I remember when I was a young graduate student, there's kind of this idea in science of being worried that someone's going to scoop you like that. Oh, I have some creative research idea and then I've got to finish the project and get it published before someone else figures out this great thing and scoops you. And I think that was encouraged a little by some things in my training environment. But one thing that I eventually came to was, even if someone publishes a research study that's kind of similar to mine, they haven't gone on the exact same journey I have to understand this phenomenon. They haven't read exactly the same things I have, connected it to real world examples. So even if someone publishes something maybe first, my perspective will still be something new, even if the research findings are kind of the same.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll be better at the theoretical analysis behind things. Because there's so many ideas out there that just kind of that have been recycled many times or replicated. Like replication is another important part of the scientific process. And maybe your replication is, the data are essentially the same because someone got there first. But all your discussion of what comes after and what the implications are can be different and can even be informed by the thing that came before you. And I'm going a little on a tangent there, but no one will have your perspective on things.
And, we talk a lot about, broadening your input, broadening your perspective. And in academia, when I was teaching, I would talk about here's your theoretical orientation, let's say, which is your approach to therapy. And a lot of the traditional therapeutic approaches and therapies are from a very singular white male perspective, right? That doesn't mean you need to get rid of cognitive behavioral therapy, let's say, right? Or psychodynamic therapy or psychoanalytic. But we can say how do we think of CBT? How do we think of psychoanalysis or psychodynamic work from a Black perspective, from an Indigenous perspective, from a European perspective? What are other voices? How are other voices and other perspectives looking at the same thing and utilizing it maybe in another way?
Dare I say both and?
Both and, right? So the beautiful part of that is, again, remembering that our voice, that our perspective, even if it's something that has been talked about before, is important. And one, to expand other people's understanding and experience and of diverse perspectives, but also for people that are within your own, again, identity, to hear it from somebody else's voice, somebody else that looks like them, and say again, representation matters too, right? Hearing and seeing somebody like you writing, contributing to those spaces, is really important.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of a really great TED Talk that I wanted to mention. And we'll see if we can link it if it's still out there when we put this episode out. But it's from America Ferrera, who we love, right? I love her. She is amazing in just about absolutely everything. But she had this great TED Talk, and she's kind of walking through some topics related to kind of diversity and diverse perspectives, especially her own, and how she navigated Hollywood, as a Latina. And the kind of catchphrase or headline is, your identity is your superpower, because no one else will have it. No one else's will be exactly like yours. And this is something that she kind of uncovered and discovered with herself, that Eric Roman is giving us the exact quote. I love it. The exact quote: "My identity is a superpower, not an obstacle."
That's really good.
I love that. And this relates to this kind of diverse people bring diverse perspectives. We all bring these superpowers. And I just, it really felt good to me hearing her talk about that and starting to try to think of that in my life, because I definitely fell into patterns of seeing these obstacles, I'm gay, I've faced these kind of problems, and we're going to talk about some of that later today. Sometimes how the way people react to us being in spaces feels more like obstacles, but seeing them as a source of strength and a source of a unique perspective that no one else can possibly have exactly my perspective.
Right.
And knowing that and finding strength in that is really empowering for me.
Yeah. And when we are starting to feel, because, whether it's intentional, unintentional, or otherwise, being in systems, there is this kind of push towards the default baseline, or in order for us to accept, we need you to look,
to fit in.
Yep, exactly. Fit in, to look, act, think, talk, speak in my language in the way that I do things. And so when we are feeling that the internal kind of like, oh, I'm outside of the norm, or I'm presenting an obstacle, or I'm creating a barrier or whatever, that like
losing part of myself to be a part of this organization.
Right. Or that there's a communication that I'm presenting a barrier because I'm giving a different perspective, that to reframe, to use a therapist word, is to reframe it, right? To reframe it for myself and reminding myself or yourself that like, no, my perspective is valid. It is not an obstacle. It is a superpower. And this is, if our space can see us, see that voice, see what we're adding as something that they can build off of and not try to get around or destroy or kind of dismantle as an obstacle. Man, again, if it's a superpower, what benefit the space will get from that, as well as the fulfillment that we get in sharing that perspective too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's starting to set us up for the kind of next big point we wanted to make, which will also lead into story time. But let's take a little break and we'll be right back. So welcome back from break. And so we have one more big concept that is also gonna pull us into our next segment. Phenomenon that happens with kind of diverse people in workplaces that we wanted to talk about. And this is something called pet to threat. This was identified, and I want to make sure I recognize the researchers, by some researchers in a paper published in 2013 called Women of Color at Mid-Career, Going from Pet to Threat. The authors were I assume they're all doctors, so doctors Kecia Thomas, Juanita Johnson-Bailey, Rosemary Phelps, and Naimia Tran. This is a phenomenon especially identified with women of color, but I think also happens, I think it's happened to me, but diverse folks or historically underrepresented folks in general, where, you know, an organization at first is very interested in having them there. Maybe they get trotted out as proof of the organization's diversity. I've actually heard people say things like, oh, we were really excited to kind of have more diverse folks to kind of shake things up and figure things out. But that shaking things up often turns into rocking the boat. This is my little take on this phenomenon. As diverse people come in, they're bringing those diverse perspectives we're talking about. At first, it's seen as this beneficial thing. So this is the pet phase. But also, they aren't really fully respected for their abilities and their competence and their professionalism and everything they're bringing to the table. They're more treated like a pet, like, oh, haha, look at us. We have this diverse person. And then over time, as those people try to kind of make contributions, point out blind spots, and so on, they start becoming a threat, because when you try to point out inequities, point out problems, and people will get those frustrated feelings that we've talked about in several episodes. When you're breaking the cultural inertia or cognitive inertia, it turns into frustrated feelings, and then people see that person as a threat. So they go from pet to threat, from shaking things up, which is seen as something good, to rocking the boat, which is seen as something bad. Let me just say, when I first read about this, I had to sit with it. I was like, oh man, this has happened to me.
Yeah. Well, and same. I think the first time you mentioned that, I also said, I had never heard of the term before. You didn't even define the term. All you said was pet to threat. And immediately I stopped and was like, oh, this is it. This is what that feeling is. This is what that is. And immediately felt and knew intuitively exactly what that was. And I think interesting, you know, about this pet to threat, that it can happen in these over time, right? Like you're coming in, you're being touted as like, oh, yay, we are doing, you know, diversity. We're doing diversity because we have this new diverse voice and diverse representation. And, oh, well, we're going to put them on every committee, and we're going to put them in. We want their voice in every single thing that we do. We want all of these things. And then over time, kind of feeling like, again, going back to the obstacle or the barriers or the the defense that comes when those voices are shared and are maybe not in alignment with where the organization thought that they were going or wanted to go. And then kind of the systematic removal of responsibilities or kind of pigeonholing into narrower and narrower.
Putting someone, quote unquote, in their place.
Putting them that, reminding them of where their place is how we often, particularly as women of color, get, being reminded of our place and
put in a corner.
There's putting baby in a corner. There's all the things that, like, again, so they can happen over time, right? Where at first they throw you into every single thing and then all of a sudden start saying like, oh, maybe not this anymore. Like, oh, we're going to give somebody else an opportunity for that. And like,
absolutely,
over time to even in a conversation, right? Like it can happen in a moment too of like, oh, we want your perspective. You share your perspective. And then there's immediate defense on sharing what you've been asked to share.
Yeah. And, excuse me, I'm choking up a little now. And part of this is, when do you get trotted out?
Right.
And so, I mean, I can think of one specific instance of this where an organization I was a part of got criticized for lack of racial diversity. Yeah. And they pointed to me and were like, well, we should talk about this. Not because I'm an expert and all that, but because of my mixed race background, which also I'm a white guy. Right? Like, I mean, I am. I have a mixed ethnic background, but it was like, oh, now we want to bring him to the front because
now you get to be ethnic.
Yes, exactly. And we're worried about this criticism someone's levied. So, but no, like, well, it doesn't look it, but, and it was, in the moment I was like, well, like it was unexpected. I didn't realize I would have to come up and speak for not just my own experience, but then I was speaking for people of color in this room. And like, I mean, I, as a scientist can say some things, but it's like you're pulling me out of the corner to show off diversity or what have you. And then
and there are those times and moments where organizations, again, I like to give benefit, benefit where it needs to be, that's not always necessarily intentional, but these times where you are put in a corner if I speak from personal experience, providing like I said before, my black ass voice, right? My black voice. But like these are the times where we don't want that necessarily, but oh no, diversity issue. So where's Amber? Like, oh, like go talk to Amber, or Amber, like, what's your perspective on this? Or can you speak to this? This thing came up. Can you talk to them about it? Well, okay, but also part of bringing in, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but bringing in diverse voices and spaces is so that everybody can start to adopt and understand why that's important, and not only having me be the one having to do that and being the one to speak on it, even when I have maybe experienced times that you've told me explicitly not to talk about it and not to talk about this experience. And now I have this like, tension with being asked to speak out when behind closed doors, I'm told not to speak up. Yeah,
absolutely.
When I think it kind of goes into our stories a little bit, right?
Yeah, let's go to story time.
Story time.
This is going to be a very different sort of story time.
Yeah, it is a different story time, because normally we have like a negative and a positive story, a really explicit and specific example. And as we were prepping for the podcast today, for this particular episode, we're both sharing our experiences and our stories of specific examples of
pet to threat,
both instantaneous, in the moment ones, over time things, how our reputation and things were attacked, that can really linger for a really long time from some of the things, and in it we both kept wrestling with whether or not to share them, because there's still a fear of retaliation or speaking out or naming those things. And
And for better or worse, we're somewhat public figures, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of weird to call ourselves
Right,
that.
yeah.
But I mean, we're speaking to the public. This is a podcast, and some of the people who maybe are connected to or involved with our pet to threat stories might listen and might take offense, and so we let's say that we want to tell you story time happened. It was off mic.
Yes, it happened.
And we collectively decided that we would rather talk about how we can't talk about some things because of this kind of pet to threat. Not only us being seen as threats to others who want to have this idea of a diverse, accepting, inclusive academy or organization, and also the threat to us that is left with. It leaves a mark on us.
Right.
And one thing I will say about mine, there's a, I don't know, meme kind of quote, which is that, if someone's talking about you negatively, the people who believe it are the people who wanted to believe it anyway. Mm-hmm. And with my experience, I want to say that I had several people, anyone who knew me well, kind of didn't really give any credence to the negative stuff that my pet to threat people had. Like, I had people come to me like, this is some bullshit. Yeah. And so that also relates to our last episode where finding your community and the kind of safety model. Luckily, people who know you well, know your strengths, know your values, they're not going to be swayed by BS. And we both, I want to give lots of credit to Dr. Kecia Thomas and her team, and especially this being a phenomenon that was thought up by women of color to characterize women of color's experiences. But also for me, not being a woman of color, it spoke to me so much. And they identify it as something that is pushing women of color out of academia, and they go more into entrepreneurial spaces. And speaking at least for myself, I mean that was a huge part of what has happened with me. And I founded our nonprofit, and I don't see that as a step down or anything. I am actually invigorated by it. I love the work we do, and the impacts. I think I'm making much more impact than if I'd stayed within the strict colonized academic space. I'm able to do better and more things. So I don't see it as a step down, but I definitely see this idea of pet to threat. It hurts. It hit me where it counts, and it is rough. And we talked earlier this season about decolonizing. That's probably new diverse joy bingo item. Like, part of decolonizing is being a threat to the existing system, seeing it in a positive way, or being a voice to give new ideas that's saying that there's a different way we can do it. And people who had to come up through that system, that feels like a threat. And it's not nice.
No. And I think that going back, that this really, in the larger scheme of a specific workplace or a space in which it's happening, experiencing that threat and the threat to, like I said, your reputation, threat to your career. Academia, like you said, is a really big one where folks of color, marginalized, and again, we're seeing statistically the number of BIPOC folks that are just leaving academia in droves. And, regardless of my own background, feeling my own personal experience of feeling like I'm contributing to that statistic of also having left academia, and now again sitting in this space of talking through multiple stories and various spaces of pet to threat, that threat being so real and so visceral right now, and how deeply it and maybe not for everybody, but how deeply it really can. Excuse me.
It's okay. Don't apologize for tears.
Yeah. It can really hit your sense of self, right? It does. Because you're trying to share your perspective, your lived experience or opinion. And now all of a sudden it is being attacked and personalized, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the thing that you're saying, but all of a sudden it's about the who of who you are. And sitting in, and I appreciate that quote about that the people that matter aren't gonna and care, right? And the ones that are gonna believe that are the ones that wanted to believe it in the first place. And I think it's a helpful perspective, and it can be really hard to hold on to when you're going through it.
Oh, absolutely.
And having to be able to step back and say, it's okay. It's okay if some people believe this, and not everybody's going to like you, and not everybody's going to like me. And the people are going to have different perspectives of you and me. And reminding yourself of that, and reminding yourself of those that know you, that know who you are, that know your character, that they will see through whatever anybody has said about you.
Absolutely.
And again, I think that there's a piece of also just being okay that there might be a perspective out there that doesn't align with who you are, or who you want to be and who you strive to be in spaces. And coming to that acceptance can be challenging.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as you said, we've both experienced this kind of in a moment where you go from pet to threat in one conversation and over time. And I mean, one of my big experiences with that was years ago. And for years afterwards, some of the rude, untrue things that they said about me, I would just be stuck. Like, I would be ruminating on it, like we talked about last episode, and I just wanted to crawl into bed and like never come out.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like it was something they said on the news that everyone in the world knows, but like when I would try to make moves to step forward in my career, to do something public, I think I had coped with this by the time we started the podcast. But if it was ever something like the podcast where I was going to be in the public eye, part of me was like, well, what if this one person who turned on me, what if they come forward and say this bullshit? And I mean, there were provably false things, like I told you that professors who were close to me came to me and were like, we don't believe this stuff. But for like one or two of the things they said, I was like, I can prove this is false. And they were like, we don't care. Yeah. But I was like, let me just show you. I want you to know.
For my own sake.
I want you to know without a shadow of a doubt, that they are just lying because they didn't like, I became a threat to some of their established ideas, but it just provably false things that just broke me for such a long time.
Yeah. And I think that it pulls folks into, and I'll say just in my own personal experience, that I found myself like trauma dumping all the time. Right? Like, oh God, when somebody would ask me a question or something, or like how I'm doing, like it made it very hard for me to just say like, things are whatever. It just like became like, oh, this thing happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and but here's what my perspective is. This is what I was doing.
Hey, blah, 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 blah. It was okay. I don't know if you're specifically talking about me because that happened. It was okay.
It happened to everybody.
I was there for you, and it broke my heart for you. And if I was able to offer any small comfort, I hope I did. But it was okay, and you're not the only one who's ever experienced this. I have been there, and I know how it feels, and screw them for doing that to you. You did nothing to deserve some of the stuff that happens. Which again, our story time is kind of we're telling the story about how we can't tell the stories.
Right, exactly.
Or have chosen not
to.
But you were treated poorly. You were treated in a manner that no one should be treated, especially not for the positive things that I know you were doing that someone took issue with.
Thank you.
And I mean, I'm sure I don't know all the details, but we've talked a lot, and I know your heart. And I know, and going back to your joy, your students knew.
Yeah.
Your students were proud of you.
Yeah.
And loved everything you did for them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think in telling these stories, or even kind of talking about the experience of how deeply impactful pet to threat is, again, whether it's intended, if anybody is intending to be threatened by what you're saying, or intending it to be, a target of a minoritized or oppressed group or not, like the impact is so deep and meaningful, meaning making, whether it's positive or negative or otherwise. And I hope in us just sharing the impact, not even the exact stories, is meaningful for other people who maybe have experienced that, and meaningful to see, like, yeah, you're not alone. This is a thing. And it's okay that, like, it maybe wrecked you. I mean, it's not okay that it wrecked you and that it impacted
it's a human
you so
response.
Much. But it is a human response, and it's one that I think that a lot of people who've experienced this resonate with deeply. And that's really our positive story is sharing, not necessarily just the stories themselves, but the term pet to threat.
Yeah, and I want to thank Dr. Kecia Thomas and her team just for putting that out there.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing because Dr. Thomas was the first author that was written, but that term, putting it out there in and of itself, it has been a healing act for the both of us. And the positive side of this very different story, a very special story time today, is that we've shared this with people and they've had the same reaction that we each had. Yeah. Where they were just like, oh, like I actually had someone grab their chest like I'm doing for the people on camera right now. Like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That has happened to me. Yeah. So I've mentioned the CSI group I work with in Canada, and a lot of indigenous folks doing the good work. And when I shared that with them, they kept telling these stories about themselves and about others they know, where it's like, oh, they brought in someone, diversity, rah, fireworks. We love this person. Oh, they're actually trying to do something that might change our establishment, and then throwing them away like garbage. And it was, and like we just started kind of saying to each other, we kind of snapped fingers and we're like, pet's a threat, like identifying how this is such a dark and awful thread that's woven through so many of our stories. And I believe you as well.
Yeah, no, it's just countless times of me sharing, after you shared the term with me, and I was like, I don't even know. I've never read any of this. You're not even defining it for me, but I just had to take that moment and breathe with it. And it was, and I've mentioned several times my Psychology Today, Catching Your Breath in the Age of I Can't Breathe. But I think oftentimes when you're in these moments, in these experiences of pet to threat, it feels like you're holding your breath and feeling like you can't breathe, and having a name, having something really specific to like call it gives you like this moment of relief and breath of like, there's a name for it. Like this is not, so I'm not crazy. This isn't just in my head. This is a real thing. Yeah. And it's not totally tangential, but the show, actually there's two shows and I'll let you talk about that one. But the show, my Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Oh yeah. That's on our list of shows to recommend sometime.
At some point. I don't know if
it's
it will
not
happen
ours for this
season.
episode.
Yeah. But it was really great. And at some point in one of the seasons, the main character gets a diagnosis, and I won't go through all of what that was, but she has a whole song
I love that song.
It's so great. So the show itself is
a musical.
Is a musical, and it's amazing and quirky and funny and all of the things. But she finally gets diagnosed, and she has a whole song called "My Diagnosis," and
she's so excited.
She's so excited that finally she knows why she acts or behaves in certain ways. And man, there's a name for this. I'm not alone. There's a community. There's a treatment approach. There's all of these things that come with just knowing what it is. And a lot of times people might think that having a diagnosis or having a name makes it worse, but it actually makes it so much better. Just the relief that I'm not the only one that has experienced this thing.
Absolutely.
Just being able to call it out for what it is, having a name. One, takes some of the power away from it, the ambiguity, right?
The ambiguity
of it.
Like, because, I mean, with mine and a few of mine, I was stuck sitting with, like, did I do something wrong?
Right.
Like because I truly want to grow from my mistakes. And, like, I was like, gosh, have I just been, am I just completely off the wall, out of left field, like, a bad person, a bad academic, like, cause I feel like I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like I thought I was making great contributions and like people appreciated what I was doing. And then it just blindsided me.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I took us on another tangent, but like questioning myself and the ambiguity, that's what got me on this. Like, am I just like, because when they see you as a threat and start treating you like a threat, you feel like you're some kind of monster,
right? Yes,
and it's
100%.
like, am I
was
delusional?
This all wrong? I thought I was doing something that was I thought this was positive. Maybe it wasn't positive. Like maybe this is terrible. Maybe I'm doing something totally. This is a very, 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 very old example, but one when I was early in my grad school, I got called arrogant once, and it's so contradictory to how I understand myself. And like, it still comes up as something that I'm very conscientious of like never coming off as arrogant. And like, but there was this point where I was just questioning myself, like, I don't know. Do arrogant people know they're arrogant? I'm like, maybe I am arrogant. So like, like, but this like constant questioning and like,
Apologies for using the word crazy, but it's it's that idea that crazy people don't know they're crazy.
Right.
If you're even asking the question, you're probably
right. But yeah, the kind of again, the ambiguity, the questioning of yourself, the like not feeling like you don't know yourself like you thought you knew yourself, and then questioning your own intentions and the impact and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm sorry that we have both gone through this.
Yes.
Yours is a little more recent than mine.
Yes.
But yeah. But we've both, so our positive story is that this label has helped a lot of people, us included. My indigenous folks I mentioned, I've had some LGBT folks who just, you see that breath, like, oh.
Yeah.
And you have with Black colleagues, I believe.
Yep.
Same
absolutely.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's relief in having a name, knowing what it is, being able to take some of that power away from it by calling it what it is. And so, yeah. I think we're on break.
Yeah. Let's go on break. Hey, everyone. We now have Diverse Joy merch available for purchase. There are Diverse Joy mugs that are dishwasher and microwave safe, some really nice large tote bags that are great for grocery shopping, very cozy embroidered hoodies, and a variety of comfy t-shirts. Whenever Amber or I wear one of our Diverse Joy shirts, people comment on how it makes them excited to see something related to joy and diversity. People are hungry for joy around diversity topics. So get some merch and help us spread the joy. We also made a PDF of free downloadable cards for Diverse Joy Bingo. You won't win any prizes, but it can be fun to play as you watch or listen to an episode. Get all of these at biashabit.com/store or just go to diversejoy.com and click the store link. All proceeds go toward helping us produce the show, and you can also make a donation to our nonprofit through the site to help us out even more. Now, back to the show. Welcome back from break. One last little thing that I want to give credit to something that I already said. The kind of people behind your back talking about you, you know, the people who are going to believe it. Yeah. That was from an Instagram that I really, really like. And I'm going to call it out so that we can give her credit. But then also talk about this other one. And it's also a way to cheer us back up.
Yes.
So the first Instagram account, it's A*4, and that's the number 4 real. And she's this fabulous, very poised Black woman. And all of her little reels or Instagram videos are things like that, where it's a little kind of inspirational quote about how, you know, you are strong, you are amazing. I know I've sent you some of hers. There's another one that we really love. It's, you know, don't worry if someone, it's something along the lines of, she says, you know, don't worry if someone's talking about you behind your back, because they are exactly where they belong. Hey, they're behind you. Hey. and she just has all, and so they're really fun. So check out that Instagram account if you're interested. Another one that I just want to shout out, because I was going to talk about these two for a different reason, but is Alethea Crimmins. That's ALETHEACR IMMINS. And we'll put these in the episode description so you don't have to catch it right in the moment. She's very similar. Both of these are Black women, by the way, but very different energies. So it gives you a little diversity across Black women even. She's kind of, and I'm going to use the word bossy, and I would advise people to be careful using the word bossy when referring to women. Yes. But I Black women. I think this is kind of her brand. Yes. Yeah. So if you're looking at your phone, you'll suddenly like see her on it as you're scrolling through, and she slaps the phone, so it looks like she's inside your phone, kind of knocking on it, like, hey, what are you doing? And she's very kind of assertive, is also a better word than bossy, telling you about how beautiful you are, how wonderful, how special, like, hey, don't listen to the haters. Hey, you there, quit being in your head about stuff. You are wonderful. You are beautiful. And she has her little tagline, have a good day on purpose.
I love that. Right? Have a good day on purpose.
She is amazing.
That's so good.
And inspirational. And both of these two accounts I mentioned are inspirational and in different ways. And so even if you follow them both, and I highly advise it, we'll put links in the episode description. It gives you a little bit of diversity across Black women. Very calm, poised, very in your face, and both beautiful, wonderful, amazing accounts.
I love that. I love that.
They were therapeutic for me through all of this kind of stuff. And whenever it pops back up, I like go to one of their accounts and I just let their wonderful platitudes and inspiration inspire me.
Yes. And you have shared several from both of them, and I know they have, I've just started following them, and it's been very inspirational. So it's been really, really great to have.
So you get a little bonus joyful recommendation. A
little extra some.
Yeah.
So with that, like, it's our question time, right?
It's our question.
Yeah, great.
All right. So our question actually, as with everything in our podcast, we always try to bring back the positivity. Like, what do we do better?
Yeah.
And so we crafted our question actually came from an audience member. Please submit those at diversejoy.com. But, you know, we talked in our very first episode about all these acronyms out there. So we love JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. But new ones have been popping up. So DEI tends to be the farthest reaching, and some places have added a letter B, DEI, B, and B is for belonging. And really that whole kind of pet to threat thing, it grows out of whose perspectives are respected and who belongs in a space. And I think this idea that women of color especially, and I'm going to add myself and people, LGBT folks, you know, when they try to rock the boat or shake things up, their perspectives aren't respected as much. And that is why these things become threats. They don't have this kind of belonging. And so the question, which I'm long-winding right now, so what's the difference between inclusion and belonging? What is the importance of belonging? And I'm going to look to Amber to start the answer. And so, Amber, what you think?
Yeah. Well, again, you know, I think at one point we talked about kind of the the goalposts being moved. Like, oh, we finally, okay, well, we did diversity. And then we're like, oh, diversity is not enough. We have to have equity. And then we have all the diversity and equity is not enough. We have to have people that are included, right? Like, and now we're adding B. And I think it's because as organizations and spaces start to try to do this work, you're seeing the gaps or holes or misses or oversights, you know, in doing this work in a deep and real way. And I think, you know, inclusion is absolutely important. We have to have inclusion, and inclusion really is about ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table and is empowered to contribute to the space, right? Is empowered to share their voice. The difference between just that, which is important to have, belonging is about ensuring that everyone at the table feels comfortable, accepted, and valued for who they are and what they bring. And both are important in order to do this work well. If I were to say right, right? If we want to say that this is coming from a truly deeply valued place, then you will being able to have both, being able to have something that is not just including me at the table, not just letting me say what I want, but that's really tied to the pet to threat phenomenon, is being able to say like, I'm valued and I can be comfortable in sharing this perspective, that I'm not going to be attacked for sharing and giving my voice and being part of this, but that I'm valued, that I'm listened to. Not that every single time I say something, we're going to go with my opinion and my voice. It's not that that is not the flip of saying like only your voice matters, but that your voice matters just as much as everybody else. It is valued, that it is that there is space and room and safe for you to share who you are and what you are in this space. And I think that that's really what it means to create a truly equitable and supportive space, workspace. And, you know, I'm going to shout out an organization. So one of the organizations that I was part of or have been part of is the Interprofessional Primary Care Institute in Oregon. And the leader is, her name's Julie Owamaja. Hey, Julie, girl. She, well, first of all, they retweet everything. They're super, super supportive
of the podcast.
Oh,
thank
you. And of me, of us, of the work. She works very, very hard to do the work well. And that was one of my roles there, was the first time I really heard the idea of DEIB. And she asked me to be the director of diversity, and then it shifted and shifted, and she's like, no, actually we want to forefront belonging, not just inclusion. And that came from her work, but also work with another organization called the Relate Lab at Oregon Health Sciences Institute. Nice. University, and they do leadership, relational leadership trainings, and that's a lot of what they emphasize. So it's something that out of interactions with these folks, it wasn't my idea. It didn't come from me, but like these other organizations and spaces saying like, hey, actually there's more to this. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I think I've always strived for that, you know, creating a sense of belonging more than just inclusion, but having, again, giving it words, giving it and forefronting it as the value.
Yeah. And when you first brought it up as an idea for the question or a topic for us to talk about, I kind of had I kind of pulled back from the idea because it felt like kind of moving the goalposts, which I always try to be cautious about. So like, well, diversity is supposed to be having the people at the table, and then inclusion, well, that's having people at the table. And then, you know, belonging, it is a form of doing inclusion well, I think. But it's not that we're kind of changing the goals so much as we're finding better ways to emphasize and communicate what it is we're looking for and striving for. Right. Because like, you know, there was a time when like our bias habit breaking training, people were like, well, it's just about reducing bias. It's not about creating inclusion because we didn't have the word. And I was like, no, it's about creating inclusion as well, because if you're reducing bias, you're better able to communicate, you're better able to welcome. And I definitely, my antenna went up when you were like belonging now. And I was like, oh, do I have to change? Like, does our training also do belonging? And it's like that it is a part of it, because if you're engaging deeply with these skills that we talk about every episode and wanting to do better and do that, then belonging is part of what you're building. And so by putting the B for some organizations, or at least talking about it, it's highlighting one of the many facets of good diversity work, which includes reducing bias, creating inclusion, enhancing belonging, and so on. So, at the end of this episode, I'm going to say, like I do at every episode, our organization, I'm going to talk about it as reducing bias, creating inclusion, and promoting equity. And I think belonging is there in spirit, even if I'm not changing the words right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And again, it's just it's a way of externally signaling or holding the institution, holding a space accountable to this value, right? Of explicitly saying it. And it is a maybe not a byproduct, but it is a byproduct of doing equity and inclusion well. Is the result is belonging. That those that are part of the institution will feel like they belong.
It could be, so we talk about equity and equality, addressing equity is the way we reach equality. So maybe doing inclusion and equity well is the way we can try to reach for belonging. Does that analogy work with how you're thinking of it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
One last bit. So there was this, after Amber first kind of brought this up, and I was kind of like, I don't know if are we just moving the goalposts, like, or what? But Amber won me over, of course. But also I ran in, just to keep talking about Instagram, apparently. I'm a little too old for Instagram is how I always felt. But since the podcast, I had to start getting into it because I have our Instagram account. And so I started posting, and then I would log in to see, are people liking our posts or following our Instagram? And so now I'm a standard Instagram millennial.
Right.
But there was a quote from Brene Brown, and the thrust of it that I wanted to share is, what is the opposite of belonging? And people think the opposite of belonging is not belonging. Right. But what she says and discusses is the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And that really highlighted what you're talking about for me. So fitting in is, making yourself fit with what the mold already is. The colonialism or colonization or that term we talked about earlier, not becoming a threat. Right. I mean, and hopefully you won't become a threat because you're in an organization that values your perspective, but not being willing to shake things up because you're just going to fit into the space that's already made, waves, which isn't necessarily made for you if you're from a different kind of background than has historically been in an organization. Like forcing yourself to, quote, fit in is the opposite of belonging. Whereas belonging is the organization, the people wanting you with your strengths and your differences and your perspectives. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that thinking about it in that way, that the opposite of belonging is fitting in, which means letting go, right? Cutting yourself to fit, right? Shaving off the edges that might look different or be different in order to fit the mold. So yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. I think there's a lot there. We can talk a lot about inclusion, belonging, diversity, all of the things. But how about our skill? What's our skill for today?
All right. Our habit breaking skill is one that I'm excited to share. And it's quite simply to, quote, track the data. The skill is tracking the data, track the data. And what this is with regard to all of the above, diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, how do we know what kind of progress we're making on it? Well, we need to look at the data. This can be in terms of things like hiring. It can be climate, if there are climate surveys or things like how much belonging are people feeling and so on. And, make sure you're doing those things with good kind of survey methodology and so on. And I want to share just a few concrete examples. So one of our huge research studies testing our bias habit breaking training, showed a result where there was an increase in hiring of women. So one of our big things. We had a huge randomized controlled study where academic departments in the sciences and medicine got our training or served as control groups. And one of the big problems in the sciences is underrepresentation of women. And if you track the data throughout kind of careers, for gender at least, we're starting to reach gender equity with who's graduating with PhDs. So more and more women, not every area of science, but in many to most areas of science, we're starting to get to the point where the people graduating with PhDs are about 50% women, which is what you expect if equity is being addressed. But in the data that we had at this big university where we did the study, the new tenure track faculty, so people after their PhD who are getting hired as new professors, were only about 32% women. So that's where, by tracking the data, we were able to identify it's this juncture point where a problem could be addressed. And so we did this huge randomized controlled study. I already said that part, where some departments got our training or were randomly assigned to be controls. And we looked at the hiring data for the 2 years after the training and the 2 years before. 2 years before was what I already said, about 32% women in both the control and training departments. In the 2 years after, the control departments, their new hires were still about 32% women. But the departments that had our training, their new hires were 47% women.
Wow. So
right up there at around the 50-50, which is what you would expect if you've been successful at rooting out biases and inequities and creating more equity. So that was, that's statistically significant. That amounts to a 43% increase in hiring of women. And the real women had jobs. Like sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers, and these are real people who got jobs, were hired as science professors at one of the top universities in the world. And so we were tracking the data because it was a research study, but companies and organizations should be doing this internally. And the pet to threat idea, one of the main points is that it pushes women of color, especially out of organizations, because they're treated like a threat, they're treated poorly, and they just can't do it anymore. And so that's something that you can start to see if you're tracking data appropriately, like who's leaving, when are they leaving, why are they leaving?
Right.
And
it's really important too to think about, tracking the data in a variety of different ways and not kind of like a composite, right? Because I think in one space that I was, they looked at kind of composite scores or like how many, let's say, just to make it easy, how many BIPOC are here, right? And they looked at the total number and not necessarily the retention rate of the same people, right?
Is this the story you told before where they said technically we're good on Black people?
Right. So we maintained the number of BIPOC folks, but we weren't looking at or retained the number, but not retaining individuals, right? And if we wanted to do the work right and well, then you're going to be looking at more than just the overall number. You're going to be looking at how well have I kept these same people?
Yes, excellent. And so with regard to our research study, so my colleagues and I are still tracking because those women got hired, but do they stay?
Did they stay? Right, exactly.
Do they reach tenure?
Right,
do they? And so, it takes time to have this kind of stuff. So we still have to wait and see. But I also want to mention, so with that, we know from broader data, like I was saying, women are graduating with PhDs at roughly equivalent rates, and not all, but many. But we also wanted to look at people of color, and there were just so few people of color, statistically, we couldn't even say anything. And when you look broader at the data, people of color are not graduating with PhD. And here we're talking about what underrepresented folks. So Asian and white folks are overrepresented in the sciences relative to the broader population. Black and brown folks underrepresented. And there are just so few Black and brown folks graduating with PhDs. We couldn't be expected for our training to see any effect on that because there aren't eligible people to consider. So it's also not a failure value of our training, and I'm not just trying to say our training is so
Right.
great, although it is, but it's just like, well, there wouldn't even be an opportunity to hire significantly more Black folks or brown folks because they're not even getting PhDs to at a rate where we could make a big change.
Right.
So then we have to look earlier in the pipeline.
Right.
And so only by tracking the data can we identify where the problem is. The problem is we need to be bringing and making science more inviting really at the undergraduate and even at the high school level is what the data say. And so, that's particular to me being in the sciences and academics, but wherever you are, your company, your organization, you are the best equipped person to know what some of those data are. Maybe not everything. Consult with people who maybe know more than you, but do you work with customers? So what kind of customers are getting brought in? What kind of customers are staying with your organization? What kind of customers are you losing or bleeding out? And then that can help you identify where you should be applying some of these skills we've been teaching you. Is it with getting people of color or LGBT folks, whatever group, to come as customers? So then that's an advertising or outreach problem. Is it you're getting them and they're like, nope. So then that's something about how they're being treated or what have you. Same thing with employees. So what kind of employees are you recruiting? What kind of employees are you hiring? Which kind of employees are staying? So again, to Amber's point on retention. And so on. So no one knows your organizations better than you. Like we're outsiders to well, some of you are in organizations we've been in, but for any context where you've been working somewhere for a while, what are the important ins and outs better than we can. But by tracking data on some of this stuff, you're going to be better able to identify the areas for improvement, areas where you're doing well and you want to keep doing well and so on. But too often I work with companies and they're like, well, we have a problem. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? It's like, well, we're not doing diversity well. And it's like, what does that mean?
What does,
what
does that mean to you?
Like, oh, well, people are just saying that we haven't done enough. And it's like, well, like we have to really get a good picture of what's going right and what's going wrong. And so tracking the data and keep checking in on it. You might be successful and then you want to keep the success going. So tracking data, and this is true in therapy and stuff as well. The tracking the data is keeping track of. So if someone thinks, oh, no one wants to be my friend, you ask them to hypothesis test, right? Or,
yeah, absolutely. You can do the hypothesis testing. We also do like journal tracking and like, tracking our negative thoughts or emotions, those kinds of things. That there's lots of ways of like kind of tracking the data over time and seeing like how often does this come up? When do I feel this way? What are kind of uprooting, getting a better sense of where and why and how we're getting to these conclusions.
Yeah. And other kinds of behavior change as well, like dieting or exercise or for me, like writing my book, which I was doing last year. Last year I started tracking, how many words a day I'm writing, how many hours I'm able to devote so that I can see the progress I'm making. And that helps keep you, what did you call it? Your to-do list?
The to-do list and the ta-da list.
Ta-da list. Yeah. So the victories too. It's not just reveling in the negativity. It's that joy.
Right. Absolutely.
But we know from all kinds of behavioral science that if people want to make a change, if they want to like a diet or all these kinds of things, tracking is a really strong tool.
Absolutely.
If you do it, you can see where your progress is, see where you're falling behind. And it's true of diversity, inclusion, belonging stuff as well. Find the data, track the data. That's your skill.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it reminds me too of something we talked about before about also being curious, right? And asking the questions like, okay, if I'm seeing this is the thing that's happening, part of the tracking is being curious about why are we seeing it happen, this thing. And that helps us root it out, right? And this is not totally off topic, but an example in kind of consultative psychology where this person came in, they was having some difficulties with a particular demographic not ever utilizing their resources. And then they had no idea really why, what was going on. And when they went back and started looking, they saw that their mailing list, some envelopes got a specific letter stamped on them, and some didn't. They didn't know why. When they finally went back, they kept going back further and further. Like, well, this is just what I was told to do. This is what I was told to do. Found out that there was an old thing that was like certain zip codes would be identified as non-desirable, essentially, and get something different or not get the newsletters, and others did, right? So just being curious about it. There wasn't any singular person that did that in purpose currently in that institution, that organization, but being curious is why do some letters have this letter and some don't? What does that mean, and how is that impacting what we're doing, right? So being curious, tracking the data, making sense of it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, as we finish out here, the second our bread slice of our sandwich here, what is our joyful recommendation, Will?
It's something that I think became kind of a phenomenon last year, if not before last year. But it's a kids' TV show called Bluey.
Bluey.
So some of you have probably heard of it, at least. I think many of you have heard of it. But have you checked it out? So it is, technically a kids show, but it started developing a big fan base among adults, even adults without kids, like Eric Roman and I. And I heard someone describe it as it's a show for parents that kids also enjoy. And I think that's a really good explanation of it. So it's about a bunch of cartoon dogs. So in terms of diversity, you're not going to get kind of human diversity per se. But like we said in our last year's October episode, the power of analogy in media can still help us develop emotional connections to messages and ideas and so on. And I think the show does it well. Through analogy, it's addressed lots of parenting issues. There's one that I think is an allegory for transgender related stuff. That one's called Stories. The episode called Stories. If you're a Bluey fan and wondering which one I'm talking about, but the story is the show is heartwarming, cute. It is definitely something I watch to reduce anxiety if I'm feeling. I know just putting it on, and they're very short, little like 7-8 minute episodes for the most part. And I, as someone who has a PhD in behavioral cognitive science, although I'm not a parent myself, I'm the oldest of 5.
Yep.
I have a lot of interfacing with parenting and understanding it from a scientific standpoint. I think it is a great show for that. The parents in the show, they have foibles, they fall short sometimes, but they're great at correcting it, and they model a lot of really great behavior for kids. Yeah, no, I would 100% agree. It had been on my list for a while. I had heard so many people talk about it, and I was like, oh, really? Like, this is it's not, I mean, I'm here for kids shows. Like, we all know this by now, but I was like, oh, this is like a little kid show. So what do you mean watch Bluey? And we watched it, and I fell in love with it, and it absolutely is a show for parents and that kids would enjoy. But there's so many nods for parents, but it just is really great modeling on how to do corrective parenting and child kind of centric parenting, and really just empowering their children, having like the relationship between the parents. And it just models really normal, typical parental interactions and things, and how they can talk about it with their kids and interact with their kids. So I can't say enough positive things about it. And, one thing, I think I said this earlier on the podcast on another episode a while back, but just to reiterate, because it's relevant for Bluey in particular, you can't just dump your kids in front of the TV and expect them to learn lessons. But Bluey, it has a lot of great lessons, and there are things, if you're a parent, watch them with your kids and talk through how what happens in the episode applies to the thing that your kid's going through, or you want your kid to learn from it. That act of kind of generalizing from the show to life is something that the role of the parent can't be overstated. Yeah, absolutely. And it is genuinely just a fun show. Like, we're all talking about, learning, blah, blah, blah. You know
It's
our
just very
rule.
cute.
For our joyful recommendation, the number
all
one thing
joy.
is it brings us joy. We think
Yeah.
it'll bring you joy. And then also maybe you learn
And
something.
maybe I get a little something extra.
It's out of Australia. And so there's also interesting different cultural things that you do get a little bit exposed to, slang terms and, why do they talk like that?
Yeah.
And so on that I've learned things about Australian culture
Yeah.
I didn't know before. So it is infuriatingly sweet and cute.
It is adorable.
And touching. So check it out. Bluey.
Check it out.
It's on. It should still be on Disney Plus, streaming on Disney Plus.
Excellent.
If I could add.
Roman loves it too. Yeah.
So Will mentioned that it's not just like a kids show that parents can watch, but like it's a good parenting show that kids can watch.
Yeah.
But also it has, for lack of a better word, quote unquote, adult humor.
100%.
So like,
Yes.
there's an episode where the aunt runs away from her wedding and then Chili realizes, she went to the lookout. And then the little kids are like, how do you know that's where she is?
Yeah.
And then the mom's like, we used to come up here when we were teenagers to think.
To
think. The implication being it was a makeout point or something. There's also another
or
adult
to
humor.
illicit drugs.
Yeah.
Or to do other things. Not think, more than think.
There's another one where because they're dogs, there's this little joke that you're like, wait. And so the father is talking to another adult male dog and he's talking about getting something removed. He's like, I don't know. What if I want them later in life? And it sounds like he's talking about getting neutered because it's a dog and he's talking about something. And then like the scene changes, but then it comes back to the scene. Turns out he's talking about like getting wisdom teeth removed or something.
Yeah.
Well, actually they call them dog teeth. Like
Dog teeth,
maybe in this fictional dog world, you take out your canine dog teeth or something.
Yeah.
It's like, what if I want to bite someone?
That's hilarious.
But like clearly a joke for the adults, that kids won't get. So it's fun. It's cute.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah, give it a watch.
All right. I'm Dr. William Cox.
And I'm Dr. Amber Nelson.
Diverse Joy is produced by Eric Roman Beining with music by Jay Arner. It is accessible as a video podcast on YouTube or an audio-only podcast wherever you get podcasts or at diversejoy.com. Follow us at Diverse Joy on most forms of social media. I talked a lot on Instagram today for some reason. We are at Diverse Joy on Instagram, so check us out there. If you enjoy the show, help us reach more people by leaving 5-star reviews or recommending it personally. Diverse Joy is the official podcast of Inequity Agents of Change, a nonprofit devoted to evidence-based approaches to reduce bias, create inclusion, and promote equity. All that good Jedi work. Learn more at biashabit.com. Thank you for joining us. Now go find your joy.
Bye.